Ever since I was younger, I knew there was something wrong with my family. Not the normal kind of wrong, where people do not talk at Thanksgiving or someone storms out over something small. This was different. This was the kind of wrong people whispered about when they thought the kids were asleep. Every eldest child on my father's side died on their 21st birthday. My great-grandmother's older brother disappeared while walking home from work. They found his coat 2 days later hanging from a tree branch, completely dry even though it had rained all week. My grandfather's older sister was found in her locked bedroom with all the windows open. My uncle's car rolled into a ditch less than a minute after midnight on his birthday, even though the road was straight and there were no skid marks. There was no pattern to how it happened, no warning, no note, no reason, just the age, 21. The only one who ever survived was my grandfather, Ed. Everyone called him Grandpa Ed, but nobody said his name casually. They said it carefully, like it belonged to someone who had walked out of a burning house without a scratch and never explained how. When I was little, I used to think he was just strict. He did not laugh much. He did not like loud clocks. He unplugged every digital display in his house. The microwave was covered with a towel. The oven clock blinked permanently at 12 o'clock because he refused to set it. He wore the same scratched silver watch every day, but it had no hands. The first time I asked him why, he looked at my father, then back at me. "Because time listens," he said. I was 9 years old when my parents started sending me to his house every weekend. At first, they said it was because Grandpa Ed was getting older and needed help around the place, but I knew that was not true. He chopped his own firewood, fixed his own roof, and could carry 2 grocery bags in each hand without breathing hard. The real reason came out one Saturday night in October. A storm had knocked out the power. I was sitting at his kitchen table, coloring in a notebook by candlelight, when I heard something scratch the outside wall. Not a branch, not an animal. It was slow, careful, like someone dragging one long fingernail across the siding. Grandpa Ed froze with his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Then he blew out the candle. The kitchen went black. I started to ask what was happening, but his hand covered my mouth before I could make a sound. We sat there in the dark for what felt like forever. Then, from the other side of the wall, something breathed. It was wet and low, and too close to the window. Grandpa Ed leaned down until his mouth was right beside my ear. "Do not look for it," he whispered. "If you look for it, it knows where you are." That was the first rule. Over the next 12 years, he taught me the rest. Rule 2. Never let a clock face you after sunset. Rule 3. If a room gets suddenly cold, leave without turning around. Rule 4. If you hear your own name whispered from another room, do not answer. Rule 5. On your 21st birthday, hide from time itself. That last one was the reason I was there. According to Grandpa Ed, the thing that came for our family was not a ghost, and it was not exactly a demon. He never liked that word. He called it, like giving it a better name would make it stronger. He said, it did not hunt the way an animal hunted. It waited. It followed the family line. And when the eldest child reached 21, it came to collect what it believed was owed. The only reason Grandpa Ed survived was because he tricked it. On the night of his 21st birthday, he locked himself in the cellar of an abandoned church, with no watches, no mirrors, no windows, and no one around who knew his name. He stayed there for 24 hours. When he came out, his older sister's name had vanished from the family Bible. No one remembered her except him. That was the part that scared me most. Not dying. Being erased. By the time I turned 20, the training became more serious. Grandpa Ed made me practice sitting in darkness for hours. He made me memorize routes through his house, with my eyes closed, He made me remove every clock from my apartment. He even taught me how to cover the small time display on my phone with black tape. My father hated it. He hated all of it. He said Grandpa Ed had filled my head with fear. He said the family had a history of accidents and mental illness, not monsters. He said the stories had ruined enough lives already. But he still never let me stay out late. He still called me 3 times a day as my birthday got closer. And 1 week before I turned 21, he drove me to Grandpa Ed's house himself. Neither of them spoke during the ride. Grandpa Ed had prepared the basement. The windows were boarded from the inside. The old fuse box had been shut off. Every reflective surface was covered. There were no clocks, no phones, no radios, no computer screens. He had placed a cot in the center of the room, along with a bottle of water and a paper bag with sandwiches inside. "You go down before sunset," he told me. "You do not come up until I open the door the next evening. No matter what you hear, no matter whose voice it uses." My throat felt tight. "What if something happens to you?" He looked at me for a long second. "Then you wait longer." That was the plan. Simple. Terrible, but simple. The evening before my birthday, I hugged my mother in the driveway. She cried into my jacket and kept telling me she loved me. My father stood a few feet behind her with his hands in his pockets, staring at the ground. My little sister Lydia did not cry. She was 17 then, and she had always been the brave one. She gave me half a smile and said, "Try not to let Grandpa turn you into a full weirdo." I laughed because I wanted to make her feel better, but when she hugged me, she whispered, "I'm scared." I told her I was too. At 5:43 p.m., Grandpa Ed led me into the basement. At 5:46, he shut the door. At 5:47, I heard him slide 3 locks into place. Then everything went quiet. For the first few hours, nothing happened. I sat on the cot with my knees pulled to my chest, breathing through my nose, trying not to think about the fact that midnight was getting closer, even if I could not see it. That was the worst part. Without clocks, time became a feeling. It stretched and folded. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like minutes. Eventually, I heard footsteps above me. Slow ones. Grandpa Ed's house was old, and every board had a different sound. I knew his steps. Heavy heel. Slight drag on the left. These were not his. They moved from the kitchen to the hallway, then stopped directly above the basement door. 3 knocks came from upstairs. Not on the front door. On the basement door. Then, my mother's voice called down. "Sweetheart, it's over. You can come up now." I closed my eyes. Rule 4. Do not answer. The voice came again, softer this time. "Please. Your grandfather made a mistake. Your father is hurt. We need you." I pressed my hands over my ears. The voice changed. My father. "Open the door. Now!" Then Lydia. "Please don't leave me up here." That almost broke me. I stood before I realized I had moved. My hand reached toward the stairs. Then I remembered what Grandpa Ed had said. It uses what you love first. So I sat back down. The voices stopped. For a while there was only silence. Then something started scratching at the door. One long scrape. Then another. Then another. The basement grew cold enough that my breath turned white. The concrete floor made quiet popping sounds under the temperature change. Somewhere in the dark, water dripped from a pipe, steady and slow. A shape appeared at the bottom of the stairs. I do not know how it got through the door. One moment the stairs were empty. The next, something was standing there, folded under the low ceiling. Grandpa Ed had described it to me 100 times, but no description was close enough. It was tall and narrow, built almost like a greyhound standing wrong. Its limbs bent where they should not. Its skin was pale and stretched tight, with no face, only a smooth blank place where one should have been. Its chest moved like it was breathing through a mouth it did not have. and beneath its ribs, something opened. Not wide, just enough for me to understand that the old stories had left out the worst parts. I looked down at the floor before it could know I had seen it. The room filled with a clicking sound, not from its throat, from everywhere, like 100 clocks ticking behind the walls. I curled into myself on the cot and repeated Grandpa Ed's final instruction in my head. Do not look. Do not answer. Do not move toward it. The thing crossed the basement slowly. I felt it stop in front of me. Something cold brushed the top of my hair. Then it leaned close, and in Grandpa Ed's voice it whispered, "This is not for you." The ticking stopped. The cold vanished, and then it was gone. I did not move again until the door opened. Light poured down the stairs, weak and gray. Stood at the top, pale, shaking, but alive. "Did you see it?" he asked. I nodded. He came down the stairs slower than I had ever seen him move. For the first time in my life, he looked old. "What did it say?" I told him. He did not speak for a long time. Then he sat on the bottom step and put his face in his hands. That was how I learned the truth. My father was not my biological father. My mother had told him before I was born, and he had raised me anyway. Grandpa Ed had known too. They all thought it did not matter. They thought if I carried the family name, if I lived in the house, if everyone believed I was the eldest son, then maybe the curse would believe it too. But it did not follow names. It followed blood. And my father's eldest biological child was not me. It was Lydia. We drove back so fast, Grandpa Ed ran 2 red lights. My father met us in the driveway before the car stopped. His face told me he already knew something was wrong. "Where's Lydia?" Grandpa Ed asked. My father went still. My mother came out behind him, holding Lydia's phone in both hands. She said Lydia had gone upstairs an hour ago to lie down, but her bedroom was empty. The window was open. On her desk, every clock in the room had stopped at the same time. 12:01. For 3 days, the police searched the woods behind our house. They found nothing. No footprints, no clothing, no sign she had run away. On the 4th morning, my mother came downstairs and asked me why I looked so tired. I told her I had been thinking about Lydia. She stared at me like she did not understand the word. Then my father walked in and asked who I was talking about. Grandpa Ed was the only one who remembered. He came over that night carrying the family Bible under one arm. We opened it at the kitchen table. Lydia's name was gone. No blank space. No scratch marks. Just a clean line between mine and the cousin born 3 years later, as if she had never existed. Grandpa Ed cried without making a sound. That was 4 years ago. I still keep my clocks covered. I still avoid mirrors after dark. I still do not answer when I hear my name from another room. And every year on Lydia's birthday, I lock myself in my apartment with the lights off and wait. Because last year, just after midnight, my phone turned on by itself. The screen was covered in black tape, but the speaker still worked. For 10 seconds, all I heard was static. Then my sister's voice whispered from the other end. "It made a mistake.